Hello, stamp lovers and history buffs. Welcome to Stamps Old World UK, where we dive deep into the fascinating world of philately and explore not just the beauty of old stamps, but also their current market value and investment potential. Today's feature is an iconic classic, the 1-cent stamp depicting Benjamin Franklin, often referred to as the 1-cent Franklin series. I'll walk you through its origins, what makes specific issues rare, how the current market values vary, and tips on how collectors and investors alike can approach this piece of postal history. To start with the value, a typical used example of these 1-cent Franklin issues is extremely modest in price, often around US $10 or less for the common, mass-produced versions. On the other hand, there are ultra-rare varieties in pristine condition or with special manufacturing traits that have sold for tens of thousands of dollars. For example, the 1923 1-cent green Franklin issue, Scott number 594, has a listing at US $90,950 for one that's very scarce. MysticStamp.com. And the rarest of them all, the 1868 1-cent Z Grill Franklin, is valued in the multi-million-dollar range. Smithsonian Magazine. So why such a wide span of values? Let's unpack the story behind the stamp, the key factors that influence value, what to look out for, and how you might assess one if you're collecting or investing. The 1-cent Franklin stamps originate from a time when small denominations of U.S. stamps were issued for postal usage, envelopes, postcards, etc., and Franklin, as the first Postmaster General of the United States, became a recurring figure. Over decades, numerous printings and varieties appeared, different colors, watermarks, perforations, paper types, and grills, though small indentations pressed into the stamp to prevent reuse. For example, one listing for the 1890 1-cent Franklin Dull Blue, Scott number 219, shows mint examples at just $82,050. MysticStamp.com.
Next up, a 2-cent U.S. postage stamp, a denomination that may at first seem modest, yet hides layers of history, variant detail, and collecting potential. To start with the value, a standard or common used example of a 2-cent stamp from the late 19th or early 20th century often trades in quite modest territory, in many cases around US $5,000 to US $15,000 in average condition. However, as with all stamp collecting, there are many factors that can push the price significantly higher, and in rare cases, far beyond what the face value suggests. Let's explore the story behind a 2-cent issue, why it matters, how to evaluate one, why its market value varies widely, and how you as a collector or investor can approach it. Historical context and significance. The 2-cent denomination in U.S. postal history was used frequently for certain domestic mail rates, for special uses like drop letters, or as part of definitive series. According to the Smithsonian National Postal Museum, postal rates at times included 2-cent charges for unmixed mail or circulars. Because so many were used and printed, many 2-cent stamps of the common types became widely available in used condition. For example, one specific issue, the 1915 2-cent Washington Red Single-Line Watermark Type 1, catalog number Scott 449, is listed with a used valuation around US $47,500 in fine grade, according to one dealer's site. This shows that a seemingly common 2-cent stamp can still command hundreds of dollars if condition and variety align. Key value drivers. What makes a 2-cent stamp worth more or much less than the baseline? Issue or variety. Which year was it issued? Which design? Which watermark or paper type? For example, a 2-cent Washington from 1894 in a rarer color or watermark can differ dramatically. Condition. Mint or never-hinged stamps, unused, can command much higher value than heavily canceled or damaged used stamps. Centering, margins, perforations, color freshness, all matter. Rarity. If only a limited number were printed, or if there is a printing error, misperforation, variant watermark, that raises interest. Authentication and provenance. Is the stamp certified by recognized expertising body? Especially for rare varieties, certification gives buyer confidence. Market demand. Even a rare stamp may not command a top price if demand is low. Conversely, niche collector interest can elevate value. Historical usage and cover. A stamp on original cover, envelope, with meaningful postal history may fetch more than a loose example. Current market value examples. As noted above, a standard used 2-cent stamp in average condition may sell for under $50,000. A much more desirable variant in good condition, for example the 1915 2-cent Washington Red Single-Line Watermark Type 1, number 449, could be listed at $47,500 used in fine condition. There are also anecdotal listings online for 2-cent red Washington stamps or other 2-cent issues with rare status asking for hundreds or thousands of dollars, though many depend on condition and verification. So when you look at your own 2-cent piece, the market value could be anywhere. A few dollars if it's a common type in average use condition, to hundreds or even more if it turns out to be a rare variant in excellent condition. How to evaluate your stamp. Since you have this 2-cent piece, here's a step-by-step to assess its potential. Identify the issue. Look for year or catalog number if visible. Compare to known designs. Is it Washington? Another figure. What color is it? Check for variety. Are there any known special printings, color differences, watermarks, perforation differences? Examine condition. Are the perforations intact? Are the margins full? Is the stamp centered? Is the color fresh or faded? Are there heavy cancellations or damage? Check back gum if unused. If mint, is it hinged, never hinged? Is the gum intact? Are there faults? Certification. If you suspect it's the rarer variant, consider getting it expertised and graded. This may increase confidence and value. Compare recent market results. Look at what similar stamps, same issue, same condition, have realized recently. Use reputable auction results or specialist dealer price lists. Be realistic. Many 2-cent stamps are common and, while historically interesting, may have modest value. If someone tells you it's worth thousands without proof, ask for documentation. As one collector on Reddit noted, it needs to be more closely analyzed. If it's not a fake, it could be worth up to $100,000. That could indicates that many do not reach that level. Why collectors are interested. Why should you care about a 2-cent stamp? Because it can tell a story of postal history, changing rates, design evolution, and even national story. While the 1-cent stamps often get top press, the 2-cent issues are no less interesting for many collectors. They are a window into the daily mail of the era, and for certain rare varieties, they become true investment pieces. Final thoughts for Stamps Old World UK viewers. So to our Stamps Old World UK family, if you own this 2-cent stamp in your collection, I encourage you to enjoy it first as a piece of postal history. Reflect on the era it comes from, how mail was sent, what the rate meant. Then, if you're curious about value, apply the checklist above: issue identification, condition, rarity, market comparables. If it turns out to be a common variety, that's perfectly fine. You still own a beautiful relic of the past. If it is a rarer variant, you might have something that commands serious attention. Either way, the real joy is in the discovery and appreciation. If you'd like in a future video, I'd be happy to deep dive into which exact 2-cent Washington or other figure stamp you have, walk through major catalog numbers, discuss which are common, which are rare, and current market values. Just leave a comment below with any details you can see, year on stamp, color, watermark, perforation, and I'll cover that.
Next up, the 3-cent purple stamp featuring Thomas Jefferson, a beautiful and historically rich U.S. postage issue. I'll walk you through its history, what makes it collectible, how much it's worth today in USD,
and what to look for if you own one or are thinking of acquiring one. Market value first. To get straight to the point, for a standard 3-cent Jefferson stamp in average condition, recent data suggests the market value is approximately US $3,000 on average. For example, one appraisal noted a mint, just not used version of this stamp at about $25,000. On the other hand, there are listings of much higher values, depending on rarity, condition, and variant, that suggest values up into the hundreds of dollars or even higher in exceptional cases. eBay. So keep in mind, while the baseline is tens of dollars, the extremes in both directions exist. Historical context. The 3-cent denomination has long served an important role in U.S. postal history for standard domestic letter postage in various eras. In this particular case, the purple 3-cent Jefferson issue falls under the presidential series issues of the late 1930s. For example, one version is the 1938 presidential series stamp number 807, linked to Thomas Jefferson. Mystic Stamp Company. Jefferson, of course, as the third president of the United States and author of the Declaration of Independence, gives this stamp greater historical resonance beyond just the postal usage. Why value varies so much? There are several key factors that influence why one 3-cent Jefferson stamp might sell for US $30 while another might fetch US $200 or more, or conversely be worth only a few dollars. Include condition, mint versus used, hinged versus never hinged, quality of centering, gum condition, perforation integrity. A well-centered mint example with fresh color will command more. Issue/variant. Which print run or perforation gauge you have matters. For example, the Scott catalog number and whether it was a coil or sheet, perforation differences, paper types, etc. One version, the 1939 3-cent Jefferson number 851, rotary coil, deep violet, lists around US $4.25 in a standard condition. Mystic Stamp Company. Rarity/special features. Any error, misperforation, rare shade, or printing variant will push value up. For example, a misperf version of number 807 was noted at a very low cost, US $7.50, but such features can make it more collectible. Kenmore Stamp Company. Market demand and provenance. Even if a stamp is rare, if demand is low or the condition weak, the value may not skyrocket. Conversely, a well-documented piece in excellent state may command more. Authentication/certification. Particularly for top-end items, having expert certification adds confidence and often value. What to look for if you have one or are thinking of acquiring one. If you own a 3-cent Jefferson stamp or are thinking of acquiring one, here's your checklist. Identify the exact issue. Look at perforations, gauge, paper type, print run, any catalog number you can find, such as in number 807 or number 851. Condition check. Are the perforations intact? Is the centering good? That is, design well within margins. Is the color fresh or faded? If mint, is the gum intact and free from major hinge marks or damage? If used, check cancellation, light versus heavy. Variety/special features. Are there known rare shades or misperforations? Is it a coil versus sheet variety? These subtle differences can matter a lot. Comparables. Look at recent actual sales for similar condition and issue. What did they sell for? Not just what they were listed for. For instance, some eBay listings show used versions of this stamp for under $20,000. eBay. Documentation/provenance. If you believe you have a rarer variety, consider getting it expertized by a recognized philatelic expertizing service. Be realistic. Many of these stamps, especially if common issue and average condition, will not be valuable enough to make a major investment, but they still contain rich history and enjoyment value. Why collectors love this stamp? The 3-cent Jefferson stamp hits a sweet spot for many collectors. It features a major historical figure, Thomas Jefferson, and ties into American history. It's reasonably accessible and affordable for many, meaning you don't always have to spend thousands to own something meaningful. For those who are serious, the presence of variants, coil versus sheet, perforation variants, shades, gives a path for specializing and discovering deeper rarities. As part of a larger series, the presidential series, it can serve as a nice anchor for building a thematic collection, like U.S. presidents on stamps. So, to our wonderful audience at Stamps Old World UK, if you have one of these 3-cent Jefferson stamps, enjoy it for the story it carries, of a president, of mail sent in decades past, of design and printing methods now long gone. Then, if you're curious about its value, apply the checklist above and compare it honestly with what similar pieces are selling for. For many, the value will be in the mid to high thousands of dollars, perhaps around US $30,000 for a common issue in decent condition, though with the right variant and excellent condition, you might see hundreds or more. If you'd like, I'd be happy to do a future video diving specifically into the different varieties of the 3-cent Jefferson stamp, sheet versus coil, perforation variants, rare shades, including a look at current market listings and auction results. Let me know in the comments if that sounds good. Thank you for joining me at Stamps Old World UK. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next deep dive into classic stamps. Happy collecting, and may your next find be historically rich and rewarding.